Hello everyone and welcome back to A Dancer's Mindset with myself, Isabella. Today we're going to be speaking with Miko Fogarty. Now Miko has achieved so much in her life. You may know her from First Position, the documentary, where she was acclaimed to fame, as well as the many YouTube videos where she's competing at the Moscow Ballet Competition, where she won gold. Miko has really achieved a lot. She then went on to Birmingham Royal Ballet. But then something wasn't right. Miko decided to quit ballet and went on to study and is still studying to become probably a very successful foot and ankle surgeon. Some of you may have been surprised by her decision to stop ballet, and today's our chance to hear from her and hear what she has to say. So let's meet Miko. So Miko, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I know a lot of my young listeners, well everyone, but especially the young ones, are going to be so inspired to hear from you. And as a young dancer myself, I was so inspired by you when I was training. And so it's really a bit fangirly for me to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor for sure.
Fantastic. So I want to start from the beginning, actually. When did you start ballet, and what inspired you to start? You never really trained in a school scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were one of these like not in one of these well-known schools.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a bit how it's all started.
Sure. So I started ballet when I was 4 years old.
Mm.
And it just started because I was doing a lot of activities at the time, like violin, piano, tennis, and ballet just happened to be one of those activities I was doing. And but it was my favorite out of those because when I went to the theater, I loved watching, even like the Marinsky came to where I live in California, and I was really inspired. So I really wanted to become a ballet dancer at the time, just from watching the performances.
Mm.
And so I continued training. Yeah, I trained mostly in like not large company associated schools, but with like more like private coaches throughout my time training. And so that started in California. And then when I was about 15, I went to Japan for a little bit and trained there. And then I went to Indiana, also in the US, for about 2 years. And then I went to Birmingham Royal Ballet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Would you agree? Because obviously, who was your main coach? Would you say throughout your time when you were training?
So up until I think starting at 11, I had a Russian coach from 11 to 15 that trained at Paganova. His name was Viktor Kabaniaev. And
Was,
then from
the,
15,
was this the coach that was featured in the
yeah,
documentary?
it was the same coach that was featured in First Position. And then when I was 15, I went to Japan with her name is Jinichi Kaoru, and she also trained Fumi Kaneko and Misa Kuranaga, and she was a great teacher. And then in Indiana, I had 3 Russian teachers, coaches there: Tatiana Pali, Alexei Moskalenko, and then Aliona Yakovleva. So those
Amazing.
were my coaches.
So you focused a lot on private coaches more than, say, obviously there could have been a decision for you to go to an actual school, but
Yeah.
was it a specific decision to focus just with private coaches?
I wouldn't say it was like a specific decision. I guess I just realized that I worked really, really well with these certain coaches,
Right.
and I wasn't like, I think my family and I weren't sure that I would be as comfortable like in a big school, or that I would just work so well with the coaches there. Maybe I would have, who knows? But I just knew I worked really, really well with the coaches I had. Um, so I guess that's why I continued to train in that kind of way. And I realized I was progressing quickly and improving. So yeah, but I definitely did think about it like through these competitions. There were scholarships and stuff like that that I was able to get. But but yeah, I guess I just really loved my coaches. So I guess I stuck with that.
Of course, we'll get to it throughout the conversation, but you succeeded a lot having not gone to like some big school. So
Mhm.
would you agree and say it's not necessarily about going to these massive schools, it's more about who the teacher is? And
Sure. I think yes and no, because I do think that going to these company associated schools does get you certain opportunities that, these private coaches cannot get you, such as, the connections of having the company right there, like being able to watch the company anytime.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the networking is a little bit better in a large school. But like it does definitely depend. If it's in terms of your technique and artistry, I think that really depends on you and your connection with your coach.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the networking aspect, I would probably say that a larger school is probably better for that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, One thing I enjoyed about the Veganova was there was sort of a balance between those two things. So
Mhm.
unlike the Royal Ballet School, where it was very much like teacher of the class goes home and that's it, see you next day. There wasn't
Mhm.
that relationship. But the coach at the Veganova was very much like felt like a coach. I
Mm.
enjoyed the kind of relationship where it's almost like a tennis player, like you feel really like looked after, like I'm your person. And you obviously had that as well with all the people you
Mhm.
worked with.
Mhm.
So at one point during your training, and your family decided for you to be homeschooled to give
Mhm.
even more priority to ballet. Did you
Yeah.
feel isolated and lonely at all? Was it hard to find motivation being alone so young?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was about 12 years old, that's when I switched to online school. So it was all online, kind of like how students had it during COVID, where all of their school was, um, yeah, online. So that's how it was starting when I was 12. I definitely missed school because I liked school growing up. I was one of the people that enjoyed, going to class, seeing my teachers. So I definitely missed that aspect. But I knew that, it was like an investment towards like my ballet training um and so I don't know. I wouldn't say I was like lonely or anything like that because there was still lots of
You're so
people like
focused, probably, as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, there were still so many people in ballet. And although I was like privately trained, I also took classes with the school that teacher taught at. So, up until
Right.
4 p.m., I would do like classes and privates. But then after that, I would take the normal classes with the school I was with. So it's not that I guess I didn't feel lonely, I would say, during that. Like homeschooling worked for me and my schedule, but yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to that as
Yeah.
well.
I
But
read
I'm glad that
somewhere
I finished high school for sure.
I read somewhere that because of your full-time ballet training, you were still very young and doing your homework at like 3 a.m. trying,
Yeah,
and that's like pretty heavy schedule for someone so young. Did you feel close to burning out at any point? And
yeah, for
you
sure, for
how did
sure.
you cope with
Yeah, so yeah, that definitely happened where I think I was like 13 or 14 and it was like nonstop ballet for like 6 months. I don't think I took like one day off.
wow.
And then at the same time, I think, yeah, ballet class starts at like 10 a.m. and then went until like 6:30 or 7. And then after that is when I would start my online school. And I had a full load just like other kids my age.
Yeah.
So then I would, yeah, and then I didn't feel satisfied until I got everything done each day.
Yeah.
So then I would study till like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. sometimes. And then I'd have to wake up at 8 or 9 a.m. the next morning. And then just that for 6 months. I just wasn't getting enough sleep as a teenager at the time. And so sleep is super important.
Yes.
And so, yeah. And then I did feel burnt out where I felt like my motivation was gone and I was like on the brink of tears with every private. It was just horrible. And then I'm like, why am I even doing ballet? All of these thoughts, when you're burnt out.
Yeah,
And
probably from the exhaustion.
yeah, just from being exhausted, just not sleeping enough, and and just going through like teenager feelings too. So
Yeah.
but I took a break for, it was not that long, like 4 days I think, where my dad and I went camping, and after that I felt myself again. I was a lot better once I took a break. So breaks are important too, for sure.
Oh, so even from watching, I mean, we're going to talk about first position in a minute, but from myself watching, I noticed just like a lot of parents, your mother in particular, was very involved, in
Mhm.
your life, and
Sure.
obviously supported you a lot, and would drive you hours to all these lessons like these mums do.
Mhm.
Did you feel, I'm quite interested to know though, did you feel at any point like, especially with maybe your isolation a little bit and any pressure with food, did you ever
Mhm.
feel a little bit pushed beyond what you wanted to do from your mum, or was it completely
Um,
supportive?
it was a little bit of both, definitely. I think I felt very, very supported, but also like I was pushed, to do my best and to stretch when I got home, and um, to eat very healthy. And so it was definitely not only my workload, but also my family's workload too, especially my mom.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely came from both of us for sure,
Mhm.
which I don't know if it's like a good thing,
Did
or
it impact
bad
your
thing.
relationship at all?
Um, I think I mean, I don't know, sometimes for sure. Like, like when we were both stressed before like an international ballet competition, it'd be easy to snap at each other or something like that. But overall, I think I got to work with her pretty well. We got to know each other pretty well through the whole process, and
Yeah.
learn how to work with each other. But actually nowadays, like our relationship is like completely different now in a good
Sure.
way. So that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always admire like kids actually who allow their mums to, because I know I have students myself and their mums are
Yeah.
very involved, and
Mhm.
I know it's coming from a place of a lot of love, a lot of care, a lot of just desire to help their child succeed.
Mhm.
However, I know also the pressure that can put on that young person,
Mhm.
because they want to, achieve the dream that not only is theirs, but also obviously the
Yeah.
parents. And I wonder how that, would impact them. But for me personally, I could never let my mum like push me to do anything. It would all
Yeah.
have to come from me. If she tried to
Mm.
make me do anything, I'd be like, go away. No, definitely.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
but so I kind of admire kids actually for letting their parents be so involved, because I
Mhm.
definitely couldn't do it for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
um but
Yeah, it's
let's
not easy.
yeah, it's not easy, no, definitely not. But
Mhm.
without these amazing mums, we wouldn't be where we are today, and we definitely wouldn't
Yeah,
have achieved what we did. um
sure.
let's talk about first position. So around the time of competing in YGP, or leading up to it, correct?
Mhm.
First position came up, and
Mhm.
director Bess
Sorry.
Cargman, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us how that happened, like how it came up in the first place.
Yeah. So what happened actually was that I think it was filmed in 2010,
Mm.
but the year of 2010, preparing for YGP. But in 2009, Bess actually was a journalist, I believe, in New York City, not like a filmmaker or anything. And I happened to be performing in the YGP finals in New York. I think I just did like one contemporary solo, and that was it, because I was in the pre-competitive category, and at the time I could only perform like one thing.
Mhm.
But anyway, I am just so lucky that the moment that she like was like, whoa, there's all these like little ballerinas coming out of this building, and she used to do some ballet. So she was interested and she walked in, and then she walked into the theater. And then I'm just so lucky at the time that she sat down was when I came on, when I was 11, onto the stage and performed my contemporary solo. And I guess I don't know, it feels weird coming from like saying this, but this is what she said, was that like it inspired her to kind of get to know the lives of these like dancers preparing for this kind of competition,
Yeah.
and to make like a film out of that. And so apparently, like, I get it, it feels so weird saying this, but she had like scrolled through the photos to like find me,
Yes.
um, and then cast.
You inspired her.
I don't know. I guess so. That's like what she says.
No,
It
obviously
feels
you
so
did.
weird to say it. It feels so weird to say it, but yeah. And then she found that I had a brother, through like the photos as well. So she contacted my mom. I think she contacted YGP to find my mom's email, and then asked if we would like to be a part of this small film she was thinking of making.
Small.
We literally thought it would not, like, it would just be a home video, honestly. Like, we did not have expectations for it, because she's like never made anything like
No.
that before. And some people told us like maybe it's not a good idea to be a part of it, you don't know how they'll portray you, all of that, but we just went with it. And then, but how she found the other dancers is that, I think she contacted YGP, and they kind of provided her a list of like up and coming dancers that are going to be competing, that they're having their eye on. So I think she followed some of those dancers too. And I think she started with like 10 featured dancers that she followed, but in the end, I think six
Mm,
were like once featured. So again, I was just like incredibly lucky and to be a part of the film.
yes.
And it was just a great opportunity for me, I would say.
Did you like the idea of having a film crew sort of being around you at probably one of the most stressful times of your life,
Um, I don't
preparing
I
for the
didn't mind it, I would say. I mean, it started off so small. It was just her and her camera just coming to the
right?
studio and just being like just like this. And it is a little bit strange at first. You're like, am I supposed to look at her, or no, we're not supposed to look. We're just supposed to continue with our lives like normal. And then it
Yeah.
wasn't that much. It was just like she came like a weekend here, and then the regional YGP competition, she came for that weekend, and then maybe with like one other film person. And then but then YGP New York finals was where there was like 10 like camera people and 10 sound people. It was like a huge production by the time it got to New York finals. But by that time I had also gotten used to kind of ignoring the camera and focusing on myself and
Yeah.
wanting to perform my best. And so it really didn't affect me too much. And also by that point, I think she knew that a lot of dancers and a lot of parents and a lot of teachers didn't want like the film crew to be too intense right before the dancers danced. So she
Yes.
was, at least with me, she was quite respectful in terms of help, like letting me do my thing before performing.
Mhm.
And then after performing, doing the interviews and stuff like that. So yeah, it was not too bad in terms of that. But I know like other featured people in that movie was more
Yeah.
like more protective, I guess,
I see.
of their space, which makes sense too.
Yeah. Well, it was honestly an amazing film, and she did an amazing job. I think it's quite iconic actually, and I think
Oh.
I think that film's going to be watched again and again and again, like generation after generation. Everybody watch First Position.
Oh my gosh,
um,
that is just
thought,
crazy.
I thought you're the best person to ask this because competitions were a heavy part of your training and your ballet life, and there's a lot of controversy around competitions, like
For sure.
whether they're a good thing, whether they're a bad thing.
Mhm.
And I've spoken to some other dancers, and they say, although they're not always a good thing for them, it was the only choice, like it was the only option for them to be
Mhm.
seen, especially if they're from a smaller or poorer country, where there
For
is an
sure.
opportunity.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to hear your opinion on competitions, having done them yourself? Like,
Mhm.
do you wholeheartedly enjoy them?
Mhm.
Did they slightly squander your love for the art form, or did they change your perspective on it? Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of conversation. And I too have like think that there's so many pros, but also so many cons of competition. And you can really see it from so many different angles. So overall, I think competitions do provide opportunity, especially if you're not in a large school, to be seen by schools and to even just gain the opportunity to perform, because a lot of like smaller schools only have like one nutcracker and maybe one showcase, and that's it. You don't really ever perform like a solo, and competition is a great experience for that. um but also there's many cons. It is a competition, and there's just so many politics involved with every competition. I don't think there's like one ballet competition out there that doesn't have like at least a little bit of politics involved, especially because ballet is just so subjective.
Yeah.
And it's not like an objective kind of thing, like running a race where whoever reaches the finish line first
Hmm.
wins. It's like so subjective, and it's not even like based on how many pirouettes you do or how high your leg is. It's not like based on that either.
No,
So it's like I don't know how it's even really judged.
I know. I often think, how is that even possible? Like, how do you
Yeah,
judge a Kitri to a Giselle? You know,
yeah, yeah,
how do you
completely
even point
different.
that?
So yeah, it's kind of in terms of like the judging systems and the points and the awards, all of that. It's like I always tell students, my students and other students, like to never do it for like for for a medal or anything like that, because you're just gonna it's it's not gonna go well.
Yeah,
Like
agreed.
ever, unless you like happen to win like gold or whatever. But just the opportunity to show off like all the hard work you've put in the studio. And I think the best part of the competition is the preparation for a competition. So working with your coach and working on your artistry, working on your technique, working on performing, putting on a costume and performing in a costume, all of that is just really great experience. And great for improvement too. So I think the lead up to a competition is really where you gain the most.
Yes.
And just the experience of having to perform is can be daunting and can be scary,
Did you get
and really exciting.
did you get nervous when you were performing?
I definitely got nervous for my turns for sure. Because I was like a pretty consistent turner, but my coaches definitely pushed me to do turns for sure.
think you were slightly known for your turns, Miko. I think, you were known as, yes, Miko Fogarty can turn extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like my definitely like I felt the pressure there for sure. So I definitely got nervous because turns are like the one thing I felt like I was the least consistent with. Like jumps, everything else is like fine, but like triple pirouette even, I'm just like, oh my God, am I gonna be able to do that on stage? Um, and so I think I got nervous for turns or like fouettes and stuff like that. But other than that, I didn't get too nervous. It wasn't like a pleasant experience, I would say, going to competition. Like I would make myself nervous though, because I performed better when I was nervous actually, which was interesting for me. Like I realized that by the time I was like 15 or 16, where if I got into the final round of these massive competitions, I would actually like relax, and then I would never perform well in the final round. So I realized that, by the time I was 16, and I was like, wow, I need to stay focused. I need to stay like a little bit nervous so that
Yeah.
I can actually perform well in the final round. Um, so I
Tell us
did that.
tell us a little bit about your Moscow ballet competition experience, because obviously that's like the ballet Olympics.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you achieved a lot in that competition.
I mean, like, yeah, like you would know, like ballet is huge in Russia,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
How did that feel going to
Oh
Moscow?
my gosh. It was like, well, actually, when I got to, well, I'll start with the preparation for
Yeah.
Moscow. So, I started preparing maybe like well, I've been doing these solos like since I was, I don't know, 12 or 13, and I was 16 then. So I have had like a few years preparing these solos.
Yes.
Um, but still, like the preparation going into that competition was definitely one of the most intense, where I was dancing, yeah, like 6 or 7 hours, like every day. I
Mm.
think I would warm up and do my own class, like maybe for 3 hours, and then I would have a 2 hour private, and then later on I would have like 2 or 3 more hours of just like regular class with the school. So it was like so intense going into it, and I was definitely tired, but
Mm.
I was still very inspired, and I wanted to just perfect everything, like from like with my fingertips to my eyelashes, like everything was like
Yeah.
perfected, with my three coaches in Indiana.
Mhm.
And so we fly to Moscow, and actually like my luggage gets lost. So
Brilliant.
thankfully all we have is like my costumes and my point shoes. And
That's all you need.
I know that's like literally all we had, and like the clothes we're wearing on the flight. Um, so, but thankfully, I think I was like, I only really needed to dance on stage like 6 days after we arrived. So by the time like I performed, it was like that morning that we actually got our luggage, because I was so lucky to go with one of my coaches, who's from Moscow, and he speaks Russian. So he was able to like call people and figure out where our luggage was and all of that. So helpful to have a Russian coach there. Um, and so yeah, it was just amazing to be in Russia, and to see all the other competitors and being so inspired to dance on like the Bolshoi like theater stage.
Yeah,
And
it's huge.
especially the final round was like the historic stage
Yeah.
with a live orchestra. Like that is like not something you experience at any other competitions. Like you never dance with a live orchestra, um, on like on the Bolshoi stage, like, or a stage like that anywhere else. So it was just such a unique experience.
And
And
the stage is also sloped, you know?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
rigged there. So I think like the 6 days leading up to the first round, I was getting used to that. And by the time the first round came along, I was pretty used to it, I would say. And I actually, like, by the end of my 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks in Moscow, I actually preferred the rake stage for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know why, like, I just preferred it. Um, and yeah, and then that is the time where I was about to dance in the final round, or I got into the final round, which was like so what an honor to be in the final round.
Did you
And
expect that to happen?
I mean, I didn't expect it, but I hoped for it for sure. And I knew I danced well in the second round. Like I did my Black Swan variation, I did the Kita, and they both went like well. And those were like my two like hardest, like technically, variations that I had to perform. So I was really happy when that was over. But I knew from like my past experiences at like Prilazan, Varna, YGP that my final round was always my worst round. So I was like, I can't let this happen again. So when I got into the finals, I was like, okay, I need to stay focused. Like tomorrow might be like the worst day if I like don't perform well, and I might not perform well, so I need to keep myself nervous. Like it was like a whole a whole mind game that I was making myself feel like more nervous and more focused. um so yeah, I think the final round was pretty early in the morning. It was like 10 or 11 a.m. and we were done by like noon. And then so we get lunch. I think right after I performed, I was like happy because I told my mom, like, even if I don't win anything, that's fine, because I know I like put my best foot forward. I danced my best, which I've actually never done in like any of the other competitions. I think I performed like seven solos or six solos. It's a lot to prepare, and having to perform all of those, and I did them all well. That was like so rare for me. So I just told my mom, I was like, even if I don't get anything, like any like medals or anything, I know I danced my best, and I'm just happy after this. So I was happy. I danced well. And yeah, we get lunch, and then after, like during lunch, my coach gets a call, like, or maybe I think it was with Larissa, who's like the YGB director, but someone gets a call like, oh, can Miko come back to the stage at 1 p.m. And we're like, okay. So after lunch, we go back to the theater, and me and a few other competitors are just hanging around on stage, like, what is happening? And then just like in our normal clothes, and then someone from the competition comes on stage, and he's like, here's the results. Number 1 goes to Miko, number 2 goes to whoever, number 3. And we were like, wait, what? Like, it was so unofficial at first. And I
That's
was like,
amazing.
wait, did this really just happen? So it was definitely an incredible experience. And I'm just glad that, us international people got awarded too, because I think a gold, silver, and bronze also went to Russian girls. So I'm just glad that they didn't just stop it at that, but they gave awards to international people too, for sure.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was like one of my best experiences for sure in terms of like my ballet career.
Yeah, I would say also what an achievement as well, winning first, and you're not Russian. Like, I think, the Russians are very political. So
Yeah, definitely.
to achieve that is big. So well done.
I've heard like rumors like the mafia is involved and stuff. Like, I don't know anything, but all I just wanted to do was dance
Do
my
variation well.
Yeah, I just wanted to do my variations well, and that was it. And like, and the judges were like Yuliana Lopatkina, who is like the
Oh my
person
God.
it was like the person I based my Paquita off of. Like, her video, her style was like she was like my icon for that variation and for everything, but especially for that. And so when I realized like the day before that I was like going to be performing that variation in front of her, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? So I just watched her variation like 1,000 times, like the day before I performed it, and just trying to absorb
Amazing.
Lopatkina. And there was other amazing judges, like Zaharova was on the judging panel, and a lot of other people too.
Incredible. What an amazing opportunity to be exposed to that. And I've seen and read somewhere before that you despite all this going on, you somehow enjoyed, well, like you just mentioned, you enjoyed much more the process more than the actual performing.
Yeah.
And I've heard you discuss before that often people go on stage and they feel this like euphoric feeling, and you were somehow missing that. And were you already feeling these feelings as you were doing these competitions and doing very well? Were you enjoying it, or were you just kind of going through the motions somewhat?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I like enjoyed being on stage. Like, I thought I would, because I loved watching people on stage. Like, anytime I would watch theater, and even to this day, I just like feel so happy. And then so I always thought growing up, like, I would feel this feeling as well performing on stage, or maybe even better. But at first I thought it was because I was competing that I was feeling this pressure, and I wasn't feeling this, I guess, joy that people feel being on stage. And I was like, all I was looking forward to was like the after dinner, like the dinner afterwards was like my main focus, like my main point of joy, I would say. Is like, like after galas and stuff, they have dinners and stuff like that. So that's all I was looking forward to. I was like, I just want to get this done over with, like do my fouettes and just go to dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, like especially with competing, I thought, I have these pirouettes I need to do, so that's why I'm nervous, and I need to be nervous to dance well. So I wouldn't say like I particularly enjoyed performing. I think there was only like 2 instances like in my whole performing career that I actually felt like joy on stage.
Yeah.
And one of them was dancing to the Nutcracker, like Sugar Plum Pas de Deux. Like, the music for that is just like, the adagio music is just amazing. So there was one moment, I think I was like 14 performing that, and the music was just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one moment. And then also I think YGP finals, like the year that I did first position, the Kitri solo, I danced in the final round and it went well. And there was like a huge roar from the crowd. And that was also a moment that was like, wow. But those are like the two moments only. So, but other than that, I was like pretty nervous. It was not necessarily like a joyful experience for me being on stage.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting to hear that, because I often reflect back to how I was feeling, because obviously, there came a point even for me where there was just something not quite right, and it really freaked me out for a while, because I was like, I just don't understand how I'm feeling, really. Because you train so hard, and I resonated with you a lot, actually, because I loved the hard work, and I became quite addicted to becoming perfect at something, or like trying really hard to achieve something. And I just loved the work ethic. I loved being, seen as one of the best ones, like working towards that. But then when it came to actually performing, I was like so nervous, and I almost had probably a lot of imposter syndrome going on and lack of belief in myself. But I did not enjoy it, really, at all. I probably enjoyed it, like you say, once or twice. And I was often thinking, just get through it. But so would you say you agree with that as well? Like, did you love sort of more the, the work, and also would you admit that you're a bit of a perfectionist with the work as well?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I enjoyed the work, but it was also going through the motions a lot for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I did push myself a lot.
Yes.
And by the way, I have to say I've like seen your videos and everything from when I was like 14, like because
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, I think I was 13 or 14, and I was thinking of going to the international program at Vaganova at the time. So I like saw your photos and I was so inspired, but just wanted to let you know.
We've been best mates.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be just like her. So I definitely looked up to you a lot. But then actually when I applied to Vaganova, I think I was like 13 or 14. They were like, you're still too young, so whatever. For like the international program. But anyway, but yeah, I guess I definitely pushed myself a lot during class and rehearsals. And I think also, my parents and my teachers expected a lot of me, so I couldn't really slack off ever.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd notice and they'd tell me or whatever. So, but I mean, I guess, but I wouldn't say I enjoyed it probably as much as you in terms of like enjoying the work. I did enjoy it, but I don't know. I thought it was like for the enjoyment of being on stage, but then I didn't get that either. So then
No, yeah. I mean, as well, I was focusing so much on the end goal of like
sure.
Being the principal dancer on stage, but then it would come like having an opportunity like that, and I'd like, no, I don't think I actually want this, in a weird, but I couldn't really compute and understand that feeling at all. I was just like, oh, I'm inexperienced, I'm just nervous. Yeah.
It's definitely like a whole psychology to it for sure, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder now, like part of the reason why I do this podcast as well is to help young people, because I wonder, had I had maybe a bit more mental support with this whole thing, possibly things I would have been able to cope better with, like whatever was going on, so it's part of the reason I do this. But I definitely resonated with you when I read this about you. So let's fast forward a little bit. So fast forward and you get your contract with Birmingham Royal Ballet. And first of all, how did you feel when your dream has come true of getting into a professional company? And I guess also you were returning to your English roots because you were born in London, right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So how did that feel initially? What was your internal reaction?
I know. I mean, I was like definitely looking at companies in England and Europe because I had a British passport, and I actually didn't even have an American passport until afterwards. So yeah, when I think Birmingham Royal was my first audition, and I know afterwards I talked to Mr. Bentley at the time, who was the director, and yeah, that day like he offered me the contract, and so I was like, wow, wait, that's it? Like it was just like one class, you know? So I was like, wow, all of this has been leading just to that. But yeah, I was really excited to go back to England and, you know, get my apartment and start with a company. And I have to say, like, the company was like really nice. Like, everyone there, I only have great things to say about the people in the company. I think
Mm.
a lot of people have changed, like, at least in the core. Like, I don't recognize anybody in the core anymore. But at the time, everyone was so nice and so welcoming, and company life was like different, but also it was like it's kind of what I expected from a company, you know, where you're rehearsing a little bit less but performing a bit more. And Birmingham Royal is a touring company, so we toured a lot, like throughout the UK. And yeah, we did so many shows of Swan Lake, and where I was in the core. And that
That
was
you, was that hard for you to process, Miko? Because I think I've noticed a lot with dancers who, let's say, have done really well in their youth and done really well either at a big school or competition. Sometimes then going into a company and going into the core and having to
Mhm,
be one of the pack for a
mhm.
while is very difficult for them, like mentally, to cope with. And was
Mhm.
that anything you struggled with? Did you struggle with that?
I would say I know like that's definitely something people say and that could be true, but for me that wasn't the case for sure. Like I knew, you know, to be a part of a company, you start from the bottom, and that's
Yeah.
you usually have to stay there for a few years. So I was very, you know, I was actually okay with, you know, being the core and doing swans. And it was like the first time where I didn't feel like I had to like really pressure myself to like, you know, do my technique like crazy.
Hmm.
And I could just um you know, just be a part of the core. And I didn't mind that at all. Like I knew
Yeah.
that was the process and that's what I expected. And I didn't, that was not something, if I was with the core for like 7 years and nothing was
Yeah.
happening, then maybe, you know, then maybe I would start feeling something in terms of like doing more soloist roles. But that wasn't the case for me. I was only with the company for 1 year. So
Yeah.
um I didn't expect that at all in my first season. Like I knew that's not reasonable. I know that's not realistic.
Yeah.
um
Did you
like
miss?
it happens to some people where they get like more soloist roles or something if the director really likes you, but in reality it's usually not like that. So I didn't expect that at all and just knew that I was going to be in the core for sure. I'm starting.
Did you
um
miss your coaches at all? Was it hard to be and not see them
um
much?
I guess
Did you
I
sort
guess
of
like
learn to, develop your own uh,
yeah.
corrections motivation?
For sure. I mean, I think, yeah, that's definitely like a transition that a lot of people go through from like student to company, is you have to
Yeah.
kind of watch yourself and correct yourself starting from there. Like you might get corrections here or there, but it's a lot more rare versus being in a school or working with a coach. So you have to, you know, work on yourself, or either ask like another company member to watch a solo for you, or watch, I don't know, you do something and asking for feedback. But it's definitely a lot more self-driven. But I guess, yeah, Birmingham Royal, like we didn't rehearse that much. It was like we would only rehearse like a week or two, and then go on tour for like 6 weeks or something like that. So, and then I think for Nutcracker we literally only had like 1 week to rehearse, and then we just performed. So it was really not that much rehearsal, just like knowing your role, knowing where you're going to be, making sure we're all like dancing well together, and then bam, we're on stage. Um so yeah, it was definitely like difference, but it was definitely fun. Like the company is just like, the people in the company are just so nice, and
Mhm.
we all got along really well. So I think it's known to be like a nice company, and it was like that for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I guess at the same time I was figuring out my own relationship with ballet and
Right.
figuring out, you know, what I was feeling at the time, and still like that was the moment where I realized like performing was not giving me the joy that I thought it would, because I was not competing anymore. We
No.
were performing just a lot, not in front of judges, not with that kind of pressure, but and me as just in the core, and I still wasn't feeling like the joy I was hoping to feel being on stage. And then at the same time, I was dealing with some body image issues
Right.
and dealing with like my right foot, which I had injured, and I guess, and also starting to become, because of that, becoming more interested in health and dealing with all of these, I guess, yeah, mental things I was going through,
Mm,
and figuring out if ballet was still what I wanted to do.
of course.
Um, and yeah, it was definitely a tough year in terms of that, in terms of my relationship with ballet. And at the same time, I was like on social media and still figuring that out, and how to manage that while also having all these conflicting feelings
Yeah.
was definitely tough for sure. But yeah, I just want to make it clear that it was definitely not the company. The company was great. People
I
were
mean,
great
I have
there.
friends in that company. I know, yeah, I know it's a very nice company, and it's nice to hear that from you as well, because,
Yeah,
obviously many companies is not always the case.
yeah, for sure.
Now I know you said briefly about your body image issues,
Mhm.
and have read somewhere before that that's sort of part of the reason as well you decided to move on from ballet, because you didn't want a career based around how you looked.
Yeah, for sure.
Share a little bit more about your body image issue.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think I was like starting to, like, from the beginning, I was starting to diet even like by the time I was like 13 or 14, like restricting what I ate. And there's just, even to this day, there's still the pressure to be like a certain body shape in ballet.
Yeah.
Um and it always felt like I was like fighting against my body. And by the time I was at Birmingham Royal, I was living by myself, and that was also a little bit more difficult in terms of that, and figuring out, where, like, it was such a hard time with my body image. Like, I was never happy with how I looked, basically. And I was starting to feel um, tired of that feeling of never feeling happy with how I looked. And
Yeah.
you're looking in the mirror every day, and I was like never happy. And I was like, my body is doing amazing things, and it's just a shame that I'm not able to, love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the mental process I was going through during that time. And it
Mm,
came to a point where, like, on top of other things, like my
yeah.
injuries and stuff, it was just like a lot of things coming together that helped me make this decision that I was tired of feeling like that I was unhappy with what I looked like. I was, you know, getting
And
more interested in other aspects of life and different passions. And I'd already experienced a lot in ballet, in terms of performing and doing galas and performing all around the world. Like, I had done a lot at the point, so I was more at ease, like, knowing that I could try something else in life, and that it would be okay.
yeah.
But I guess telling people and opening up about it was definitely the hardest part for me.
So how
About
did you so you came to this decision, and it makes sense, like a lot of factors are at play, and you've obviously been quite mature with that decision. Like, you've been very aware of like how you're feeling, like,
Mhm.
I don't want to be, it's very hard, because you work so
Yeah,
hard towards something, and then you
yeah,
get to
yeah,
a point,
definitely.
it's supposed to be, I had the same moment actually, it's supposed to be your life, and you're supposed to, like, it's like, I've worked so hard for this moment, and then you start realizing day in day out that I'm not actually happy, and you're like,
Yeah.
is this it, like, is this like, like, okay, this isn't cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I wonder, because I had a similar situation.
Mhm.
And it's very hard to open up about these feelings, because initially you're actually terrified you're having these feelings. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't right. How did
Mhm.
you tell your mum about this decision? Because after everything, and a lot of people have seen how much she's done with the documentary and everything,
Yeah.
how did she cope with you telling her that?
Yeah, I guess she could see that I was struggling when I was in Birmingham. So she actually came to Birmingham, I think it was like around like March of that year or something, to see how I was. And I was, I was definitely struggling with how I was feeling. And I think she saw that I was also struggling,
Yeah.
and trying to figure things out. But it was actually when I came back to California at some point, and um, I was talking through things with her and my dad, and we were just like going on a walk. And,
Yeah.
she's like, if you want to pursue something else, that's like, okay. And I
Wow.
think just hearing that from her was like
Yeah.
really almost like the green light for me to be able to finally accept that I can do something else. So that really was helpful. And like overall, like my parents were quite supportive of me doing something else, even though, we've all put our work into this and this is all something we invested in. However, like, yeah, hearing that like coming from her was really, really helpful for me. And especially when I was saying that I wanted to go into healthcare. And I think hearing that I had another goal in mind was, I think, helpful for her for sure. And I think it was definitely like a grieving process for all of us, like where you go through like literally all the stages of grief, because it is like that when you leave ballet. It's definitely like losing
Yeah.
someone, losing something like that. And like I think even like Martha Graham had a quote where it's like a dancer dies twice, like once when they have to leave dance and then once when they actually die. And it definitely felt like that. However, like I was really scared at the time that ballet wouldn't be a part of my life at all anymore. Oh, my cat. But actually, I was able to keep ballet a part of my life till today and forever. So I was
Yeah.
really happy about that for sure.
Yeah, because you teach as well, don't you now? As
Yeah, I teach now,
you
so
lots
and I
of
still keep in contact with people in the ballet world, and I
wow.
still, go to see ballet. So it's still very much like a part of me for sure.
And now you're studying to be a foot and ankle surgeon. And actually, I couldn't be more excited because I'm basically in love with my, not literally, but I love my foot and ankle surgeon. I've never actually had ankle surgery, but
Mhm.
um, you know, I just what's so amazing about surgeons is just how much trust you put into them. And
Definitely.
I have had hip surgery, but
Mhm.
I've trusted all the surgeons like completely. And I think, you're going to do so well in this industry because not I think I don't know if it's ever happened where someone has been such a successful ballerina and is now going to become a surgeon. Probably, I mean, are you interested in like being specialized in dancers' feet?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like
I think so. I think I'll be interested in that for sure.
incredible. So I'm sure you're gonna get like when the day comes, like client after client of help me, Miko. But it's
Yeah.
amazing. Tell us about how it's going and
Yeah.
how you're
It's
enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, so to become a foot and ankle surgeon in the US, you have to finish college, like undergraduate program. And
Yeah,
then after that, you go through 4 more years of medical school. And then after that, you have like 3 more years of what they call residency, which is more training in the hospital. So right now I have finished my undergraduate degree in biology, and now I'm in my second year in podiatry like medical school, and it's going well. Like it's a lot of studying for sure, but I think the second year we're finally able to see patients. So now
wow.
I'm starting to see patients, and I just gave my first like injection to a patient the other day to remove a toenail, and I don't know, it's quite exciting, and we're learning more about surgery. We have our podiatric surgery course now, and it's definitely like more exciting as the years go by because in college you have to learn all the basics like general chemistry, organic chemistry, like physics. Like you have to go through all of those courses to even get into like medical school. And then from medical school, you start to, first year is still pretty basic sciences like biochemistry and physiology. And as much as I love the basic sciences, like the clinical sciences are more exciting to me. So we're starting to learn more of that. And that's like quite exciting. And yeah, I still don't know, like there's a lot of interesting, I guess, specialties within foot and ankle.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure what I would want to specialize in, but I mean, it would be really, really like an honor to work with dancers and athletes. And so that is definitely something I'm thinking about.
Yes.
And, you know, as a dancer, I would definitely prefer having a doctor that used to dance or at least understands dance.
Yeah, I know I would. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I feel like dancers like prefer to go through like conservative measures first, like, and to not have surgery first, just to figure out if there's some way to recover from their injuries or whatever's happening conservatively. I mean, that's even what I did with my own injury. I think when I broke my second metatarsal in my right foot, at first, like the one of the surgeons was like, yeah, we'll just have surgery, put a screw in it. But then when I got a second opinion from another surgeon, she was like, you know, your bone's perfectly aligned and there really isn't a reason to put a screw in it because it's like healing fine and you're young and healthy, like it'll be fine. And it was fine. It did heal perfectly fine. So I think as a dancer or as a former dancer, I'll like understand that, but also, you know, be able to understand when this happened, like why, like maybe you fell from like a certain jump, like I'd be able to understand those terms a lot better having been a ballet dancer. So I mean, it would definitely be an honor to work with dancers for sure.
No, it's very, very exciting. And yeah, I think every dancer will be heading your way when that time comes. It's very, very interesting.
Mhm.
I'm interested to know how you're like coping now, just physically, because even even for me, like I'm not dancing as much every day. Like I'm focusing a lot on other things, like my business and other students.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, how do you, how you cope? Because obviously you're studying a lot, and your life
yeah,
changed like completely from like dancing like
yeah.
8 hours a day to like now sitting in a chair studying for
Yeah. For
something.
that, yeah, exactly.
So,
Um,
how like are you doing? Do you still do any kind of, exercise? Like, can you find joy in some exercise, or what are you
yeah,
doing now for
sure.
yourself?
Yeah, you're completely right when you say like we are studying a lot, sitting a lot. Thankfully, like this year, because of COVID, like we actually get to go to classes in person. So at least we're not stuck at home all day, but we get to go to school. So that's much better, actually. I prefer having to go somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I love stretching still. Like I still stretch because it just feels good to me to stretch it out. And yeah, when I feel like I've been too sedentary, then I definitely try to do some workout classes and work out with my friends and yeah, me and my family, like we go on walks a lot. So I definitely try to stay somewhat active, but it can definitely get hard when when school like gets so busy.
Yeah,
But I think, you know, physical health plays a big role in mental health. And
absolutely.
so it's important, you know, to stay physically healthy and continue to eat like nutritious foods, get sleep, exercise when you can, and um, you know, to try to prioritize that when you can for sure.
Yeah.
Like I know it does get hard when you get extremely busy, but I try my best for sure.
Absolutely. And um before we've got a couple of questions left. Um
Mhm.
you do a lot of teaching now, or when you can, right, in your breaks and things. And is that
Yeah.
something you enjoy? Like, do you like teaching?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like I definitely enjoy teaching more than I liked dancing for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think like the body that I had for ballet was like quite difficult to dance with or to deal with. You know, I didn't have like archy feet. I didn't have like the best turnout. I was like somewhat flexible, But, I had to really work hard to figure out how to dance in a way that looked good with my body type. And so through that process, I learned a lot, and I want to, help other dancers and like the next generation to dance really well, but also, with dance with artistry too. Um, so yeah, just passing on the knowledge that I gained from my own like Russian coaches and
Yeah.
on.
Maybe, part of what your destiny is like is actually, I feel like you're happiest when you're helping other people. So
Mhm.
like when you're teaching, but also the whole studying to become a surgeon thing, like that's literally like saving people. And I think that's where, even though you were really good at being the ballerina and
Mhm.
achieving a lot with that, you gain most of your happiness from helping others.
Yeah, I think that's like a perfect way to say it. Like, I think you put it into better words than I've ever put it into words. But yeah, I like that's exactly how I feel. Like, I don't prefer to be in the spotlight, I would say. Like, but even like backstage, I prefer to be backstage a lot more than being on stage, and um, helping others gain, what their goals, and
Yeah.
helping others with their goals is something that gives me joy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of, I'm so thankful for the experiences I've had, and growing up, but this is definitely what I prefer doing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Often that comes from childhood, actually, like these traits,
Mhm.
almost like a caregiver, but potentially it's not kind of highlighted enough for us to take notice of it until
Mhm.
much later. But I think now
Mhm.
that's very clear to you who you are and what you want to do. And no, it's really fantastic. I have one question from um a follower of mine, but I've had this question a lot, and I thought
Okay.
I'm going to save the answer to ask Miko this because I think
Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you.
it, it's literally about time management.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you used to obviously train a lot, study a lot, and a
Mhm.
lot of the dancers who come to me, they're not in full-time school in terms of ballet school. So they're in full-time academic school, and they're
Sure.
desperately trying to train around
Mhm.
it. And they
Mhm.
often ask me, like, how can I actually fit this in? Because I've got homework to do and this. So what
Yeah.
would you say are any major tips that could help them out?
Yeah. Yeah, I know it can definitely be a struggle, like with that, because especially with people that go to full-time school and want to do ballet as well, it's definitely takes a lot of time out of your day, but it's definitely possible. So I would say, working with your school administrators and your ballet administrators and figuring out a schedule that works for you. Like a lot of schools actually allow some students to, not have to take physical education or not have to take a certain class because they know that you're getting educated anyway later on in the day. So they let you like leave class or leave school a little bit early to focus on ballet. But if you're not able to do that, I would say prioritizing your time depending on what is coming up. So if you have like a ballet performance coming up, spending a little bit more of your day in the studio, rehearsing for your performances. But then also if you have an exam for school coming up, um, prioritizing your time for that. And so just prioritizing like what you want to be doing in your life at the moment. But there are definitely programs in colleges that offer, a dance major, but also other completely other majors too, that if you want to go to college but still dance, there's that opportunity there to double major. And I know like I think you know Dr. Merritt
Yes,
Moore?
she's a
Yeah.
best friend of mine.
Yes, yes. Oh my, she's the perfect person to ask this too,
I have
because
asked her as well.
I think she was saying how like she does that where it's like when she has a performance coming up, she spends like 80% of her time preparing for the performance and 20% of her time working on her like
Yeah.
science. And then opposite, if she has like a big conference or a presentation or some project that she's working on for her scientific research, she does 80% of her time on that and 20% of her time in ballet. So that's one way to go about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just see where your priorities are in the moment. Like for me right now, my priority is definitely school.
Yeah.
So making sure I have enough time for that. And then there's going to be off times too. So during my time off, I try to schedule in some ballet for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I manage that.
Yeah. I always like to talk about as well, like the little moments. So for example, you know, if someone wants to improve their feet, and Merit's talked about this as well, it's like, you know, you're on the bus, like there's an opportunity, let's do our metatarsals while we're sitting on the bus, do you know? Or
Definitely.
you know, or there's sort of always time to be used, you know.
Yeah.
The often where you're just sitting down traveling, like what can I do here that could further me, you know, because like it's I think we've both read that book about atomic habits, and it's sort of like 1 minute here, 1 minute each day of like your feet will just really get you somewhere in a few months,
Yeah, for
you know.
sure. Yeah. There's so many minutes, so many hours in a day that you can fit a lot in
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
Miko, thank you so much. It's been
Oh, thank
so
you.
nice to meet you for one, and also just hear about your journey and talk to you in detail, because obviously, you know, I've watched as well your career throughout since you were so young, and it's just really nice to hear all about it, and also you know, your inner strength to, you know, with your huge following, you know, that strength to say, actually, I'm not happy, I want to do something else, and be doing something extremely difficult, and going for that as well. And I'm sure you're going to do amazingly well, and you're going to help so many people, and it's been a huge honor to have you on the podcast today, so thank you so
Oh, no,
much.
thank you so much, Isabella, for having me. It's an honor to, you know, meet you too. Like I looked up to you a lot as well growing up, and yeah, thank you so much for thinking of me on your podcast. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Miko.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone, this episode of A Dancer's Mindset with Miko. I think that was just so inspiring to talk with her, and I've always, you know, looked up to her since I was young, so it was really amazing to speak with her. She shows so much inner strength to achieve so much in her life as a ballerina, but also have that strength to say, do you know what, so I need something different in my life. This isn't what my destiny is. I want to do something else. And despite her social status on all the social medias and everything, have the strength to decide and to publicly say, do you know what, I'm going to do something else and do just as well, if not better. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.